want you to hold it against you like this so nobody can see it. Okay? All right. Can you hold that? Okay, good. And can you hold that? Good. All right. So, what this community found are 4 different ways of being in that community. The people that came into the church at Philippi, they first felt this. Can you hold it up where everybody can see it? Hold it up higher. There. They felt lonely. That's right. They felt lonely. The reason why is as the city grew, they became more and more alone, more and more isolated. And the church became a place in Philippi where they no longer felt lonely. They had a place to go on the first day of the week. They had a place to go. And so they were no longer lonely. Can you turn your card around? The people that came there were wounded, right? They were wounded. The wounded came from Rome. This is where a lot of the soldiers who could no longer do their jobs because they had been wounded in the line of duty. This is where they came to Philippi to rest and relax. This is where people that had been in Rome and had lost their husbands or their wives or their families or their jobs, they came to Philippi looking for a better place. The people that came to Philippi were wounded. Nice. People that came to Philippi were outcasts. They weren't welcome in the Jewish tradition for various reasons. They weren't welcome in the great temple of the sun god because they didn't believe it. They were outcasts. They were people who didn't know or belong in community. And lastly, they were afraid. You see, the economic tide that was rising in all of Philippi, it didn't raise everybody's boat. Some people were left behind in this, and they were afraid of the changes that were coming. Other people were afraid because Latin was becoming the main language and they didn't know how to speak Latin. Other people were afraid because Greek was the language that you had to write and they couldn't write Greek. They were becoming afraid. And if you can all hold your signs up again. In this community, they were lonely, they were wounded, they were outcast, and they were afraid. But what Paul preached when he planted this church, you can get your signs down. He planted a church. Oh, actually, thank you. When he got there, that was the community that he had. And instead, he planted the seeds, and people became joyful. The ones who originally were on the outside became on the inside, and they were very happy. They became confident. Those that were wounded became healed. Those that were wounded on the inside became strong and confident in what they believed. And it was because of the church that they had. They became, instead of outcasts, they became known as overcoming. They were able to overcome the various things that were going wrong in society because the church was creating a new society within it. And last, but certainly not least, they were known as friends of God. That in this community, they became friends of God. You guys feel comfortable? Can you stand here for a little bit longer? Okay. So, that's a nice day, you might say. That was 2,000 years ago, in the Greek Empire. Great, that's fine. What does it have to do with San Marcos? What does it have to do about Vista? What does this have to do about Escondido today? Have any of you seen our community change in the last generation and a half? Have any of you seen a highway called 78 kind of plowed through and more cars arriving on it? Have any of you seen people arriving from out of the area that speak different languages and have different customs? Have any of you felt lonely, despondent, alone, wounded? See, Philippi is simply a community that we all can relate to, because I think we live in it today. But there's some good news associated with this. Now I'm going to tell you guys a story. I knew this kid, and he was a 6th grader. He was in 6th grade. And he loved elementary school. Elementary school was awesome for him. He had all his friends. Elementary school was about going out and playing in the yard and get your knees dirty and throwing the ball around. In school, he did quite well. He was popular with the students. He became class president and kind of class clown half the time. But it was great. He really enjoyed elementary school, and it was fun. But then, back in those days, we had this thing called junior high. Junior high was 7th grade through 9th grade. And so all the sixth graders, upon their graduation from elementary school, go into junior high. His elementary school was one of 6 elementary schools that fit into this very large junior high. That means that the students in his class, if they knew everybody in their elementary school, they would only know 1/6 of the folks in junior high. 1/6. So it was a lonely time. Of the 8 friends that he had that were very popular and good friends, they no longer wanted to go out into the yard and play catch. It was no longer cool to get your knees dirty. Some of his friends, 2 of them actually, went with a crowd who would use drugs. And they would use them after school when their parents weren't home. 2 of his friends got known into the class known as the jocks. I don't know if this exists anymore, the jocks. But it certainly existed back then. Their main goal was to play high school football, high school basketball. Everything they do revolved around that. There was another group that decided that they should start climbing the social ladder. That no longer was it important if you can throw a football well or run fast down the field. What became important was the clothes you wear, the type of video games that you had, the type of friends that you knew. And they left that circle of friends and started climbing the social ladder. For this kid who came out of 6th grade and into 7th grade, he too felt afraid. His friends were gone. He too felt like an outcast. He was the only one seemingly who missed grade school and wanted to play like his friends used to play, and he was no longer accepted. His friends that left to go do drugs made him wounded. There was nothing he could do to stop them. And last, and probably the most important, is he felt lonely. Well, the story doesn't end there. You see, there was a new youth group that had started in the United Methodist Church, and he and some of his friends started attending this youth group. And in that youth group, they found out that they weren't the only ones who were afraid of junior high. They weren't the only ones who were lonely, and they started to feel lit up. They started to feel that joyfulness that you had of grade school, that joyfulness of getting together and playing, of just getting to know each other for who you are, and not what the type of clothes you wear, and not the type of video games you know how to play. They felt joyful in that youth group. When they got together, they felt confident. They felt like a group again, like they were worth something, like they could do something. They felt as if they could overcome anything that grade school had to throw at them. And they were known as friends of God. It was through this youth group that he became a citizen of heaven, and knew what that meant, because he was with a group of kids who understood him, and they understood each other, and they loved each other anyway. So if I can have the kids' attention right now, if you all can look at me, I've got a little bit of bad news. Society that we live in today is just like junior high. I'm sorry, I wish it was something different. But society in the world today, the world that your parents work in, the world that your parents go to school in, the parents and your grandparents' world is just like junior high. It is no longer about playing and having fun. It is no longer about the status of how you can play, but what you own and who you know. It is no longer about the status of the type of friends you can make. Instead, it's about how far you can climb in business. The world, our world, is like junior high. Wish I could change it. And this is our youth group. The church is your youth group. The church is where we come together out of that world, where we get to be joyful with each other, where we get to share with each other, and we look across at each other and know that we are wounded, know that we have been put down and that we're afraid. But we know that about each other, and we can come together as a community, as this big youth group, and we can have fun together. We can have fellowship together. We can become friends of God together. So here it is, folks. The citizenship of heaven begins in this place. That by us coming together and singing together and playing together, we will know that we are a part of that citizenship in heaven. Amen.